Hello, welcome to another episode of Myth, Legends, Fairy Tales, and Makeup, the series where I tell you the original stories of some very popular films while I do my makeup. If you are new here, welcome! My name is Chantel, but you can call me Chanty. And today I will be telling you the original story of Jack the Giant Killer, which was one of the inspirations for Jack the Giant Killer, a film that was produced in 2013. Now, Jack the Giant Killer is not to be confused with Jack the Beanstalk. That is a different story that I will be telling another time. This story was actually a collection of stories from English folklore, and it's been pulled together by many different editors in its time in print. But this particular version was collected by Iona and Peter Opie in their Fairytale anthology, The Classic Fairytales. I will have the information for this book linked in the description down below, along with the channel links for Bailey Sarian and Robert Welsh, whose Get Ready With Me series inspired me to create this one. So, Jack was the son of a wealthy farmer in Cornwall, and he was known for being strong, witty, and intelligent. One day, he went to a town hall meeting where some magistrates were arguing about how to deal with an 18-foot giant that had taken residence on the edge of town. This giant ate their cattle, stole their riches, and killed anyone that it felt was too close to its cave dwelling. Jack asked the magistrates what they would pay to someone who managed to kill the giant. They said that if any one person was successful in killing the giant, they could keep all the treasures that they found in its cave. So Jack claims the task and sets off for the mountain where the giant lives, taking with him a horn, a pickaxe, and a shovel. Now, Jack arrives at the mountain late at night, so he begins digging a 22-foot pit. When he's done, he covers it in sticks and twigs to make it look like there's no pit there. It's very early morning when he finishes this task, so he blows on the horn he brought with him, stirring the giant from its sleep. The giant was pissed. It came out of its cave charging at Jack. But Jack had positioned himself on the opposite side of the pit from where the giant was going to come from. So when the giant tried to run at him, he instead fell into the pit, and Jack immediately drove his pickaxe into the giant's head, killing him instantly. Jack buried the giant and went into the cave to retrieve his treasure, then immediately went to tell the magistrates the good news. They were so impressed that they had a belt and a sword made for Jack and engraved his name on them to honor him. News of Jack's accomplishments spread and eventually reached the ears of a giant named Blunderbore, who rampaged just west of where Jack lived. Blunderbore swore to avenge its fellow giant if Jack ever came close to the enchanted castle that it lived in. Now, it just so happened, soon after this, Jack decided to travel to Wales. On his journey, he fell asleep not too far from the castle Blunderbore lived in. Blunderbore just happened to stumble across this sleeping Jack and recognized him instantly from the engraving on his belt. He picked up Jack and took him back to his castle, where a very confused Jack woke up next to a pile of human bones. Blunderbore proceeds to tell Jack exactly how he's going to eat him piece by piece, and then leaves him locked in his dining chamber while he goes to get another giant to enjoy the demise of the supposed giant killer. However, while Blunderbore is gone, Jack fastens a noose for the two giants and drops them over their heads as they enter the dining chambers. The nooses aren't enough to kill the giants, but it takes them by surprise, and Jack is able to slit their throats before they even know what's going on, killing them instantly. Jack immediately begins to explore the castle and eventually finds 3 maidens who have been trapped there by the giants, and finds 3 beautiful maidens who have been tied up by their hair to keep them from escaping. They tell Jack that the giant has been starving them in order to eventually force them to eat their own husbands. Jack leaves the keys to the castle to the ladies so that they have a place to live, and then carries on his way. he travels for a while after killing Blunderbore without coming across anybody. So the next time a home appears, he knocks on the door and is surprised to find a two-headed giant. The giant pretends to be friendly to Jack to get him to stay the night. For some reason, mumbles under his breath that he's planning on killing Jack eventually, which Jack hears. Jack loads up the bed with trinkets and blankets to trick the giant into thinking that he's killed him, and hides in the closet overnight. The giant beats the crap out of the guest bed thinking that Jack is in it. To his surprise, Jack surfaces in the morning unscathed. Jack even mentions that his only discomfort in the night was what he believed to be a flea bite. The giant then gives Jack 4 gallons of hasty pudding. I looked it up, and hasty pudding is like cornmeal, flour, sugar, pretty much porridge. And when the giant isn't looking, Jack takes a bunch of the hasty pudding and puts it into a sack and then hides that sack underneath his shirt. He then tells the giant that he's going to perform a magic trick and cuts into the sack pretending that it's his stomach. When his guts spill out, the giant is amazed and insists that he can do it too, grabs Jack's sword and cuts into his own belly, killing himself. Now, Jack's journey came to cross paths with King Arthur's son, who was on a quest to request a fair maiden that had become possessed by 7 demons. In his travels, the king's son had stumbled across a very poor village that was run by a greedy lord, whom everyone in the village owed money to. While there, the prince put out a claim that any who approached him while he was in the village, claiming the debts that they owed to the lord, the prince would pay off their debts. By the time the prince got through all of the villagers, he had no money left. Jack thought this was incredibly cool of the prince to do and decided that he wanted to serve him. The prince was realizing that he wasn't going to be able to get very far in his journey without money, so Jack offered to share what little he had left in his pocket. Well, it didn't take them long to run out of this money too, so Jack offers to find lodgings with his uncle, who's a 3-headed giant. I'd really like to see the family tree on that one. The prince is justifiably freaked by this idea, so Jack offers to ride ahead to make sure it's all good in the hood. Jack rides up to the giant's castle and claims that the king's son is coming after him with 1,000 soldiers to kill him. The giant is scared, and Jack tells him that he should probably hide and helps him hide in a vault in the ground. He goes and gets the prince, and they spend the night in the giant's castle, drinking and eating, and even pocket some of his treasure. The next morning, Jack tells the prince to ride ahead of him and that he'll catch up eventually. He goes to the vault to tell his uncle giant that the threat has passed and he can get out now. His uncle giant is so grateful that he offers Jack anything in his house, to which Jack asks for a rusty old sword, a hat, a coat, and a pair of shoes that he noticed by the giant's bed. The giant tells Jack that he's chosen wisely because although the objects look useless, the cloak can make him invisible, the cap gives him lots of knowledge, the shoes will help him run fast, and the sword can cut through anything. He then catches up with the prince, who has found his way to the home of the maiden that he is trying to rescue. She puts together a dinner for the 2 companions, and at the end of the meal says that she's going to hide her handkerchief somewhere, and that if the prince doesn't bring it to her in the morning, then she will chop off his head. She then places the handkerchief in her bosom and leaves the 2 men to discuss what to do. Jack uses his cap of knowledge to discover that the woman has been tricked by Lucifer, who she gave the handkerchief to. Lucifer had hidden the handkerchief on a shelf in the house, which Jack retrieved it from. Then, using his shoes of swiftness, he sneaks past Lucifer to steal the handkerchief. The next day, when the prince brings her the handkerchief, she kisses him on the lips and says that the next morning, if he doesn't bring her the lips of the last person she kissed, then he'll lose his head. The prince tells her that as long as she kisses no one else after him, that will be no problem, to which the woman slyly tells him that she can't guarantee anything. Jack dons his cloak of invisibility and follows the woman for the rest of the day and eventually catches her kissing Lucifer. Once she's left Lucifer again, Jack sneaks in and cuts off the head of Lucifer, giving it to the prince. Almost immediately, the woman's curse is lifted, and what's left is a beautiful, kind, and virtuous woman who the prince wants to marry. He is so grateful to Jack that he begs King Arthur to honor Jack in some way, and King Arthur offers Jack a seat at the round table. Jack is incredibly grateful and asks to continue serving his king by roaming the countryside and killing giants. The king was on board and gave him some rations and a horse to help him along his journey. Soon after leaving the king, Jack finds himself at the edge of a forest where he finds a giant holding a knight and a lady by their hair to keep them captive. Jack hacks at the legs of the giant until he hacks his legs right off, and the giant succumbs to blood loss. The knight and the lady are so grateful that they invite Jack back to their home to rest for the evening. While there, Jack learns that the giant he killed has a friend that he lives with in a cave not too far from the knight and the lady's house. And that giant was supposedly even more terrible than the giant that Jack had already killed. Jack ventures off to this cave wearing his cloak of invisibility and finds the second giant sitting outside of its cave, waiting for his friend to come home. In an attempt to stab the giant in the eye, Jack accidentally cuts off the giant's nose. The giant is in pain and angry, so he decides to start just smashing his club everywhere because he can't see his attacker. Meanwhile, the invisible Jack dances around trying not to get hit. Jack continues to try and stab the giant wherever he can to try and kill him until eventually his sword gets stuck in the giant's ass. After this, Jack just kind of sits back and watches the giant dance around until eventually it dies of blood loss, much like his friend. Jack enters the giant's cave and finds many humans that have been held captive there, and he releases them. He also splits the giant's treasure among them so that they can safely return home. Jack also has the heads of the giants sent back to King Arthur to let him know that he's still doing good in his name. Not long after this, Jack discovers that a giant named Thunderdell has sworn vengeance for all of his fallen comrades that Jack has taken care of. Thunderdell eventually catches up with Jack, who uses his shoes of swiftness to goad Thunderdell into following him onto a bridge that collapses under his weight. Because Thunderdell can't swim, Jack is able to cut off both of his heads without any problem. Once again, Jack sends back the two heads of the giant to King Arthur. Jack continues on his way and learns of a terrible giant named Galligantus, who not only tricks people into his castle, but traps them there by turning them into animals using magic. The most devastating of all was a beautiful daughter of a duke who had been trapped there by being turned into a deer. Jack swore that he would kill this giant and set towards Galligantus's castle. He wore all of his magical equipment to protect himself, and because of this, he was able to sneak past two fire-breathing griffins that guarded the gate of the castle. Jack noticed a horn mounted near the entrance with an inscription below it that said, "Whoever shall this trumpet blow shall soon the giant overthrow and break the black enchantments straight. So shall be in happy state," which freaked Galligantus right out. The giant fumbled for his club, and in that time, Jack was able to sneak up and cut off his head. The moment the giant died, all of its spells lifted, and the people were able to return to their human form. Jack found the Duke's daughter, and they returned to King Arthur in order to get blessing for their marriage. Once married, Jack left behind his adventuring ways and spent the rest of his days happy with his wife. What a journey. What a story. But what does it all mean? Something that struck me while reading this was all the opportunities that Jack had to settle down and stop adventuring. He killed many giants and had access to their stash several times. He could have claimed it as his own and just become a rich man at any point. Instead, he shares the adventures of his spoils with the people he meets. The 3 women that he found tied up by their hair, the prince, the village people that he saved from the cave. Jack almost seems unable to settle down. That is until he saves the Duke's daughter and decides to marry her. Was there some deeper meaning or moral to this? Or was it just a convenient way to end a collection of stories about a giant slayer? Because even a fictional character has to set his sword aside at some point. Tell me below what you guys think of Jack the Giant Killer and what the moral of this story may be, because I really want to know. Also, if you like this video and you like my vibe, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Take it easy.